Today we're going to talk about some good and bad things you can do when you construct a media presentation. Now, presentations can be anything from Google Slides to PowerPoint, Prezi, other online types of presentation programs. Today I use Google Slides to make this presentation, and I hope it serves as somewhat of an example on a good presentation. So let's talk about it. The first thing I always try to remember is what is the purpose of my presentation? Different ones might have different purposes, but overall I think they have kind of the same reason for doing it. Some of those purposes are to provide a visual. There's a lot of people who learn by seeing it. I am one of those visual learners, and so it gives me something to look at to make what I'm hearing kind of come together. Another purpose is to share an idea or a message. As a teacher, I'm trying to educate about a topic, but presentations can be used for all sorts of things. But you're trying to convey something new to somebody else. And the third one is to engage your audience. A lot of media presentations now are more engaging. You can even answer questions and do surveys online and all kinds of things that you can engage the people you're talking to with to get even more engagement and learning happening. So we're going to talk about the goods and the bads of media presentations. The first thing I wanted to talk about when you're constructing a presentation to think about is your theme. You need to provide an overall theme throughout your presentation. This can be done using the background of the slide, the colors that you're using. Mine today is green and white mostly, and some dark blue. The font, the sizes, colors, and how you're going to emphasize words, and then the design of the kind of the layout of it. You want it to be pretty consistent throughout your PowerPoint, the same font, same colors, etc. This is a template I downloaded from Slide Carnival online. They have a bunch of free ones that are really cool, but I thought this one was neat and it showed a good theme throughout. They have about the same tone of blue on every slide. If you notice here, the font is the same colors and font size and style. They also had the same hexagon shapes in all the backgrounds of the slides. So I think this has a really nice theme to it and it's consistent throughout. Although this isn't actually a PowerPoint or a presentation I found, this would be a bad example of a theme. If one slide is blue and green, kind of a paint look with this type of font, and then the next one's white with a different font and flowers, and the next slide it has a different font yet and even some more different backgrounds. This just makes it too wild and it makes it hard to be consistent and make an overall message through your presentation. The next topic I wanted to talk about is while still having your theme, you need to offer variety. Variety between your slides causes your eyes to move around and that keeps you engaged and it keeps it fresh and fun. You don't want a boring PowerPoint that's the same on every slide. So I use that same template as on the theme for this one because I thought even though this one has such a good theme, it also offers variety. Each of these slides are different. You could duplicate them and have some of the same, but it offers a good variety. So we have our title slide, all uppercase, big letters, and then this one's designed in columns. This one has a photo on it. Back to more of a headline. This one's just a simple quote, and then this one had a picture in the background. And so while they all go together well, they do offer variety to the presentation. Here's a bad example of variety. So this one, all the same. Each slide looks about the same. They have the digestive system organ at the top and then what it does. There's no pictures, kind of a boring slideshow. So we want to mix it up and have a little bit more variety in our slides. Another thing to consider when you're constructing that presentation is your use of direct language. Language not necessarily with grammar, that's important too, but more how you present your language to your audience. I think it's very effective to use bullets and numbers, kind of like this one is designed. Keeps it to the point and it keeps it simple. You don't want long paragraphs. Again, information overload. The brain cannot handle that much coming at it at once. And so to simplify it and hit on the high points, and then you could always elaborate through your talking with your presentation if needed. So here's some good examples of language on slides. I stole this out of a plant anatomy PowerPoint. So types of stems, there's a nice image and then the vocab word with what it does and then an example. Short and to the point, this one's similar with arrows, really hitting home that the xylem moves water upward. Not only is this uppercase, but it also has an arrow pointing up. So a very good visual with just enough information and not overload. Here's an example, a bad example of too much on language and text on your slide. Not only is this heavy in words, it's also heavy in very technical terminology. Too much, especially if you're teaching someone something, there's way too much to explain on one slide here. I could see spending a day on just this slide alone's information to truly help people understand it. So making sure you're not overloading them on information on one slide is important. Another thing to think about is your element design and layout. I think each slide kind of needs a focal point. The focal point of this slide I'm on now is these words design and layout. They're big and bold, and that's what catches your eye. It could be images, clip art, other things. It could be text. So have one thing that really you want the main point to be on that slide. And then you need to have an appropriate amount of elements. Elements being text boxes, images, videos, etc. And appropriate by not too few and not too many. You need a happy medium there. So for a good example of this design layout, I picked two slides related to horses. So this first one was horse colors. I like that it's so simple. I feel like it's in a very effective slide. We have chestnut and sorrel. It explains what it is, and there's a picture example. Very short, sweet, a lot of nice white space around it. So you're only thinking about and looking at what is important on this slide. This other slide also designed very well. We have some white space, but we have some nice, we got bullets and variety. We have a picture here to go along with it. But I feel like it's the right amount of stuff on the slide. Much more would be too busy, but I think they did a nice job. A bad example of design layout. On this orange slide here, we have so much empty space, and then our sentences are broken up by only one word on each sentence, and then the words are almost touching the pictures. Spread that out, put the words up here, get it organized a little bit better. And then this one, I think they really tried hard to do a nice template, but they just have way too much going on. Imagine your brain processing each of these pictures. We have, a wagon and slaughter and a war and farming and rodeos and jumping. We have so much we could talk about on this slide that it's just overload. And then there's also a lot of information too in text form. So too much, we need to back that off a little bit. All right, quality is something you need to think about when you construct a presentation. Quality can be clear pictures and then relevant graphics. So having pictures and graphics that actually enhance learning, add to the presentation, and don't just distract from what you're trying to do. My two good examples here. This one is out of a equine disease PowerPoint. This disease of the equine brain is shown in a picture, and I think it's just phenomenal. It is a true actual photograph, and what better than seeing the real thing if you're learning about what it does to a horse. Also good quality, like you can see everything good, so I think it is excellent for this slide. Over here on the John Deere one, I love how they use that as a backdrop. They framed it with text very nicely. Good quality picture. catches my attention and I want to talk about it. So I think those are two really good pictures to use on this. On this John Deere combine over here, we got some distortion going on. They stretched that picture to make it fit. I don't recommend that because that looks like you don't even know what a combine's supposed to look like. So it kind of takes away your credibility a bit. So make sure we have good proportional pictures that are clear and easy to see. Over here on this clip art, I put a random one that has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about today. So that's irrelevant and he probably shouldn't be there. But then also, if you notice, Alamy has the rights to this picture, this clip art. So don't put a picture with those little bars across it. And then don't use a picture if you don't have permission to use it. The last thing to think about when you're constructing your presentation is movement or the lack of movement. Transitions are good, whether it's text coming into the slide, pictures adding, or movement between slides. And then don't be distracting. I have gone to some workshops that talk about how adding things that aren't necessary, especially movement-wise, can just distract your audience from what you're saying. And so a lot of times I think movement can be more harmful than good. So you have to be very strategic in using it if you want to use it. A good example of movement I use in my classes a lot when we do diagrams is to introduce the information slowly. So adding one thing at a time. If we were to label this flower, here's the petal, give your audience time to write down one thing before you introduce something else, the stem and the sepal. So this is an example. It wouldn't have to be a diagram. It could be text being added slowly so that you're not giving them too much at once. I think that's a great example of how movement can be used effectively in a presentation. A bad example of movement, this jump rope guy here. You could sit there and watch him all day long and not listen to anything the speaker's saying and not really pay attention to the rest of the slides. So he's a distraction and he needs to go. With text entering your slide, I think you can get way too wild. So your animations and transitions can be good, but they can also distract, causing the presentation to not be successful. So too much movement in too many different ways, not a good thing on a presentation. The last thing I think you need to make sure you do is offer time for questions for you to clarify anything from your presentation. Ask them what questions do you have before you actually end your slideshow. Have it part of it. That way there's a wrap up, clarify anything you need to, and end on a good note. So that's it, and I hope you enjoyed and got something positive out of this. Thank you.